Should we jump into it?
Yeah, let's do the damn thing.
Okay, ladies, how are you?
Loaded question.
Yeah. Oh, really? Uh-oh.
No, I'm just
We're like
kidding.
ready to jump right into it. There we go.
I mean, I'm sure, I know you live on the West Coast, but I'm sure you've heard about the state of life in Ontario right now.
I have. You know, before we jump into that though, let's let the people know who you are first.
Oh, yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the lovely voices you hear on the other end are Nat and San from the podcast InfoWhores. So first of all, first question, because I want to kind of get into your guys' backgrounds and how you kind of ended up where you are. But where did the name InfoWhores come from?
Well, that's a question for San.
No,
Okay.
I just made a list of names, and that one was the best.
Yeah, we did have a short list. Like, there was
Okay.
like the anti-social, because there's that Toronto show, The Social. I don't know what else there was, but InfoWhores just really stuck.
Yeah, I think it works.
Is that like an Alex Jones shout
Yeah.
out?
Yes.
I mean, we don't actually really listen to Alex Jones at all. We just thought it was
It's a nice play on it, and everyone in our circle will recognize
yeah, I think a lot of
the
people would.
pun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're cheeky gals, you know.
No, totally. I love it. I mean, I got the reference right away, so I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Perfect.
Cool. Good stuff. Stan got quiet again. That's okay.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
So InfoWhores. You guys have been doing a podcast for almost. You guys started like right after I started mine. I think pretty close.
Yeah, like February 2021.
Got you. Okay, so I think I started mine back in like August, September, and then
Yeah.
didn't do an episode for like 3 months, and then now I'm
You had
doing
to
more
like
regularly.
you had to like recuperate from all the hate you got.
What? Really?
Man. Nat, did I? Oh, Stan, you haven't heard this story?
No.
He's been slammed.
Oh
No.
man,
Yeah.
I went through the ringer, which I mean I kind of expected because that's just coming out of the closet as a conservative these days,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, I let out an episode. There was like a whole movement against this one restaurant slash garden in Abbotsford called Tangle Bank. And the story is basically Tangle Bank, it's a husband and wife that own the business, and the husband made like a comment saying all lives matter on some downtown business association Instagram post, right? Anyways, a bunch of local town drama, right?
Abbotsford.
Yeah, totally. And like all lives matter, I get that it can be interpreted as like inflammatory or disrespectful to the whole BLM movement, but he literally clarified it by saying like all lives matter, let's just respect everybody, right? So he clearly
Yeah.
wasn't meaning it to be racist or whatever. And they tried to like take down this business. The wife is a city councilor in Abbotsford. They
What?
tried to like get her off city council.
What?
And I just released a podcast kind of calling them all out because that's nonsense, right? And yeah, that's like they all tanked my iTunes ratings and like dislikes on my videos on YouTube are
What?
crazy, and it's all coming from that same group still. But
I give you 5 stars
Yeah.
like every day. I don't know if that matters because I'm the same person, but I try to like, you know.
yeah, I so appreciate that.
But
I so
good for you.
appreciate that.
Good for you for doing that.
Hi, thank you, Sand. Thank you. And seriously, good for you. Like, honestly, it's so encouraging to have, at least with Nat, like another local friend who's doing this and to hear your voice, Sand, and you guys talking about things that matter and kind of swimming upstream is so rare and brave these days. It's encouraging to have people of like mind
Yeah,
willing to speak
it's nice
up because it's
to know
so
you're
more
not
rare.
alone.
But
Yeah,
it's not
100%.
even. But our views are not new views. These are traditional views that the three of us kind of have. It's just we're not.
It's not mainstream.
It's not mainstream anymore. It's our views are considered backwards now.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
the,
totally. Which I think is for me is total fun, especially having a musician background. So for,
I'm a musician
for
too. What do you play?
conservatism-
What do you play?
What's that? Say again?
You're a musician. What do you play?
Oh, I play a little bit of everything. I have a little alternative rock band that's done a bunch here and there. Not so much since COVID because all our shows and stuff got canceled.
Of course.
But I think it's fun. I think it's fun that conservatism became like the new counterculture, like the new punk rock.
Yeah.
Oh, heck
Which
yeah.
I didn't
It is.
expect.
Yeah.
Which is like, I mean, it's super fun to be on that side of the aisle, I guess, right?
Yeah, the right side of history.
But yeah. Thank you.
Literally.
Ben have you read that book, by the way?
No.
No. Oh, that's a book by Ben Shapiro, and it's phenomenal.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh,
But
Benny.
yeah, I just finished that actually a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
and
good to
he
know.
basically he just lays down the philosophy of like Western conservatism going back through, like, he talks about the Greeks and Jerusalem and kind of the twin pillars of Athens and Jerusalem. So Greek reason and then Judeo-Christian foundations, right?
Totally.
Phenomenal. But okay, so a little more about San. I'm gonna get to you, Nat, in a second. But San, what's kind of, just really quickly, I want to sum up your trajectory. What led you to being a conservative, speaking out on the InfoWhores podcast?
Well, I wasn't. I spent like my whole life being an SJW, a very liberal feminist, rah feminist. And it wasn't until I went to community college recently to become a social worker that I realized that what they're teaching young people and what they're teaching in schools is it's right. It's not right. They're teaching socialism. They're teaching extreme communism, and it's
Wow.
and that really awakened me, I guess. It red pilled me, and yeah, I started watching Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and learning about politics. I was never political in my life, so it was only through politics that I met Nat through our local People's Party of Canada candidate.
Yeah.
Oh, get out of here! Really?
Yeah, that's how we met.
Yeah.
Okay.
We like met the guy who was running for PPC in
Robert
our
Stewart.
Yeah.
Awesome.
In our kind of area, and he was hosting like a party to watch the election, and we were the only
Okay.
girls there.
No, there
Good
was
for you.
there was no one there.
Representation matters, right?
Yeah.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
It was just shocking to meet
Yeah.
another female conservative. So
No, but
that's-
our writing is it will never be anything but liberal.
yeah. Oh well, Toronto is
Right.
NDP heavy here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
For
we
sure,
met.
for
It
sure.
was fate,
Yeah.
and here we are.
And now we're just
Awesome.
a couple of info horrors.
So
Just
what? So Patrick, what about you? Do you have a lot of? Did you lose a lot of friends, or do you have a lot of? Do you have a big community of conservatives out where you are?
Well, you know what, San? It's kind of an interesting story. I definitely have a lot of conservative friends. Before starting this podcast, I thought Abbotsford was a lot more conservative than so far it's appeared to be from
Right.
kind of the flack I've gotten. Yeah, which was a surprise because I thought I kind of lived. I mean, where I live in the Fraser Valley in Abbotsford. Nat, you know this. We got called like the Bible Belt of the Fraser Valley, right? Like it's like
It was always conservative
known.
growing up.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I just think, and maybe it's because I'm kind of the age of people who have just been in college or recently graduated from college or in college. And so I've really been able to see kind of firsthand the really negative, like, socialist communist influence that colleges are having on even conservative towns.
Yeah.
Because that's my age group. That's who's listening to me. I just got dragged through the ringer right off the bat, right? In what I thought was a conservative town. And so, yeah, it's been surprising that, like, I've gotten a bunch of hate from people I don't know, but I've also gotten a lot of more hate than I expected from people I do know. Which you mentioned Jordan Peterson earlier. He speaks of ideological possession, where it's like you're so possessed by an ideology.
Yeah.
That it just kind of it dilutes your thinking, and that
Yeah.
you start not treating people as human. Like, I've been called by friends who know me very well. Like, literally, Nat and I were talking about a friend of ours, a mutual friend that I was a roommate with once.
Yeah.
And he has since like this dude literally lived with me. We were good friends, right?
Yeah.
And he's called me a misogynist and a transphobe and a racist and a whole bunch of nonsense that's totally
Yeah.
baseless and unfounded.
Yeah.
Simply because I disagree with him on some policy points, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the left these days is to
Yeah, they
just
want to dehumanize people, right? So it's
Yeah.
easier to like slam people with these meaningless like titles and names. It's
Yeah. But I have to say, like, college and universities they're extremely powerful. And you're catching them at their most impressionable age, right? Where they're struggling to find an identity and,
Figure out their career or whatever. Yeah.
more about their personality than it is career at this point. But yeah, it's very powerful. But that's too bad about your roommate and your friends.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, and this is actually, I want to get into this, Nat, I want to get into your story as well. But I want to talk a little bit about, afterwards, just tips for, it's almost funny that, like coming out of the closet as conservative, that's kind of how I've been thinking about it lately.
Yeah. Dave Rubin talks about that a lot in his book. Yeah.
He does. I haven't read his actually. I've been meaning to order it. Don't burn
it's
this
good.
book.
It's an easy read. It's good. I would definitely recommend it if you're someone who is on the fence, because it really equips you with cool baseline facts and stuff. It's a good read for like a liberal who's like, I don't know if I identify with liberalism as it's defined now,
Yeah, totally awesome, because I've heard that from numerous people, who even like I follow a bunch of even gay conservatives, right?
Yeah.
And like the common thread through all of that is like, coming out as conservative was way harder than coming out as gay in 2020, 2021, right? And I can't verify the truth of that myself, not being gay, but
just take their word for it.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so, I guess I wanted to get into like some tips for that, but how, because I think we're coming into a time where we need people who have the courage to speak out, because I think we've been silent for far too long. That's kind of how things got so bad to begin with.
Yeah, they always say the silent majority, right?
Yeah.
Although I'm less and less certain that we're the majority. I don't know. There's just the silent us.
Totally. Who knows if it's the majority? But that's exactly right. The reason we don't know is because many of us are not speaking out, because I think a lot of it, and this is not to degrade anyone's personal situation. People have families, people have
jobs,
livelihoods and careers they've spent years building, right? So I understand the fear of like, if me coming out and saying what I believe to be the truth is going to jeopardize those things, jeopardize my livelihood, jeopardize my family's well-being. I understand that's a difficult hurdle, right? But I also think I honestly, and this is not, I find myself kind of aghast at how paranoid I maybe come across lately, but I think we are at real risk of starting to lose those things. So I want to get into that in a sec, but Nat, I want to explore your story a little bit, because I know a little bit of your story personally. We were friends back when you lived on the worst coast, as you call it now.
I still think it's the best coast. It's just
good.
I'm not supposed to say that.
So you guys went to high school together?
No, so Patrick and I grew up in theater together, like for like years and years and years, like many plays, like, The Outsiders represent, like, so we've known each other for quite a long time. I don't know, like, what your impression of me was as a young, actress or whatever, but I was kind of apolitical, I think, for most of my life. I mean, my parents are conservatives. I was, I guess, raised conservative, but I just didn't really care as a young artist, as a budding artist. Just kidding. And then I went to University of the Fraser Valley, and it's like kind of subtly a very progressive place. Of course, in theater, I guess I don't know. I didn't find that it was like an obvious indoctrination, but little things here and there, like accepting this and that and this and that. It was kind of just like a snowball effect. And I kind of slowly just started accepting it as, truth. Without really questioning it, because you're just involved with all these people. You don't want to step on any toes.
But also they sell it well. Sorry to interject.
Yeah, they sell it really well. Absolutely.
Totally.
Especially when you're in the arts, right? Because everything in the arts is so accepting and free and whatever.
And artists tend to be bleeding hearts.
Yeah, totally. So it's always the emotional play when you're an artist, right? Anyway, so I kind of fell into that a bit, but to be honest, it never really added up for me, that whole leftist kind of ideology, and I never fully felt like I belonged in that community. I always felt like sort of the odd one out. Anyway, so then fast forward a few years, Trump wins the election. And I never really cared about politics, but I just remember hearing so much hate towards this man who was loved by all of America for decades. Like, we all grew up watching The Apprentice. Come on. Like, you're fired.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
That's a horrible
You're
impression.
fired. Yeah.
You know, clearly I'm not an actor anymore. But I don't know. It just made no sense to me. So I started kind of going down the rabbit hole there, and I was like, no, this is all lies. Like, the media's been lying to all of us for so long, and we didn't even stop to think or question it. We were just so used to whatever they said as being Bible, you know? So anyway, that's what pushed me.
Yeah. No, totally. It's funny to hear you say that, because I didn't know that kind of whole story. And really quickly too, I just think it's so funny. I think I kind of discovered you were conservative through Instagram, just seeing some things you were posting. Yeah. And we kind of reconnected that way, because we kind of lost touch after you moved to Ontario and that kind of thing. But I remember reaching out to you, or you reached out to me or something, because of stuff we were posting. And it's just like, I was so surprised that you of all people ended up conservative, because that's my memory of you back when we knew each other as well, is that you were totally apolitical. So I knew nothing about your politics. But what I know is that, like, holy crap, the UFE theater department, everyone else ended up like super liberal, non-binary, like, I don't even know. like
everyone has pronouns in their bio.
Yeah, like 100%. Like, everyone else from the UFE theater department, everyone who's like a student or a professor or all of that, right?
But do they have land acknowledgements?
Do they have land acknowledgement?
Is that the next tier of, like, in the Twitter bio is land?
That's the wokest of the woke.
They used to at UFV they would honor the land that they were on.
No, if you have that in your bio,
every ceremony, every like graduation ceremony and stuff, they always mention that. Yeah.
That's really funny though. I'm not friends with like anyone from UFE anymore. So if
really?
y'all are listening, I don't know. It's me. They're not listening. Let's be honest.
But yeah, so I was like, when I found that out, I was like there is a God, like someone, because someone from the UFE theater department can still end up conservative. I think that says a lot about your character. I think it's great.
Well, I think it's because I was rooted in faith though, and I read my Bible, and I think that's really influenced my politics. Frankly, that's been, I think, one of the biggest things.
Love it.
Yeah. So,
totally.
Do you have a religious background? Or?
I do. Yeah, I was totally. Okay. Actually, it sounds like my story very much parallels Nat. I didn't know this, but I was raised by Christian parents. I've been Christian my entire life, and I was very apolitical too. Like, I think probably the early 2010s, I think, is when we were most active in kind of our theater days.
Right.
And so through that process, I liberalized a little bit, and I was a youth leader for a long time in a church. Yeah. And then around 2016, it was coming off the tail end of a summer internship at my church as a youth leader. And I had been a restaurant manager and a server for a long time. And when that internship ended, I didn't want to go back to that. So I found myself unemployed right around the same month Trump got elected, right? And funny, I was heartbroken when Trump got elected. Yeah. Like, I looked at that, I was like, I thought that the world was so much less racist and homophobic because I had believed everything I'd seen, right? You just you assume that the news is telling you the truth until you find reason to believe otherwise, right? And what red pilled me, I can trace it back to like a single moment, was I saw J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, obviously, right? Which is beloved. I still love it. But she tweeted out a video of Donald Trump. Basically, he's like, there's like a row of people. It's like a greeting circle or what, like a receiving circle in the Oval Office, right? And he's going around and shaking everyone's hands. And there's this little handicapped kid in a wheelchair, right? And Trump just like blows by and doesn't even acknowledge his presence. The kid's trying to shake his hand and say hi, and Trump doesn't give him the time of day, right? It looks really bad. And J.K. Rowling tweets this out saying, Trump is disgusting. He doesn't even view the disabled as people. He dehumanizes them, blah, 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 right? Yeah. And then one of the top comments actually was like, can you apologize and retract this and post the whole video, please? And the whole video, you can tell it's the whole video because it's from the moment Trump walks into the room, right? He goes straight to the kid in the wheelchair
Oh,
and like crouches down
Yeah.
and says hi, spends like 30 seconds with the kid, and then
Yeah.
goes around, spends 2 seconds with everybody else.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh god.
And like I
Wow.
almost like, to me it was like, oh god, like so heartwarming. Like it
is.
I almost choked up a little bit because I'm like, that was so sweet of him, right?
Well,
which is
that's
like-
an even better. That's an even better example, like compared to the Charlottesville argument, right?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Totally.
Well, progressives hate context, so
They're allergic to it.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. 100%. And so
That's-
I was blown away. By like how deceptive that was. I don't think J.K. Rowling did that on purpose, but I was just like, whoever was circulating that video just decided to leave the truth out, right? And just frick it. And I have a narrative to spin. And so I was just like, if that's happened once, how many times has it happened? And down the rabbit hole I went, right?
Wow.
Everything that Trump said that was apparently racist or misogynist or homophobic, you put it in its context and that all disappears.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
Charlottesville is a great example, right? That, you're like good people on both sides. Yeah, we'll show the part where he literally says, I'm not talking about the KKK or the white supremacists. I condemn them utterly, right? Like he literally says that in the next sentence. You never hear that part, right?
Yeah.
Totally. What a good story, though.
That's
But
amazing.
yeah,
But,
that's
like,
that's how this whole thing started for me. But
I love it.
Yeah.
San, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
I forget.
Oh,
No, but like
so sorry. So sorry.
but props to you both. Like for walking away from the left is not an easy thing. Like to admit that you were mistaken about something and you had a person all wrong. For example, Donald Trump. To admit that you were wrong about somebody. It's a big thing. It's a big deal to acknowledge to your friends that you made a mistake.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah, so I
nice.
think especially in today's age where it's like, I got accused of I was defending a cop in one of these crazy BLM things,
which one?
which we can get into. One of these tragic shootings. I think it was the one about Adam Toledo, one of the recent ones, the 13-year-old who was shot by police.
Okay.
I was talking about that with somebody, and I got accused of licking the boots of cops, which just doesn't make any sense, because it's like, I don't know what motivation I could possibly have for like sucking up to cops, right? I don't have a criminal background, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what motivation I could have. That logically it makes no sense. But that's what I find is like, I think, and this is not to like pump ourselves up or whatever, but we have very little to gain by coming out as conservative in 2021.
No.
And so the only reason I see that we would do that is we're either some kind of grifter, which I don't get none of us are that, or we're like, we actually believe in what we're saying, right? We're actually convinced of the truth of what we're saying and think truth is important enough to give a megaphone to, right?
Yeah, important enough to risk losing friends, family.
Yeah.
But I think the left are fueled by emotions, right? So they're searching for ways to call people out and ways to be offended.
Yeah, they're desperate to be offended for sure.
Yeah. They're just waiting.
Yeah. They're like on the prowl.
They are though.
When can I be offended? Yeah.
I'm like ironically sipping out of a leftist tears tumbler from Daily Wire, but
Nice. We got to get some tumblers.
cheers, ladies. Yeah.
Cheers.
So really quickly, I want to get into, we'll make this one quick because there's some stuff I want to get into with you. But some tips for bravery, some tips for people who like maybe think the same, but are scared of coming out about it.
Yeah. For me, before I say anything on social media, for example, I give it to God, to be honest.
Right on.
Yeah. Like,
Love
honestly,
it.
when you surrender it to him and make sure what you're saying is honoring and glorifying God, because it's really easy to just, say stats for your own ego and whatever. But I really want everything I say and do to hopefully glorify God. I mean, I fall short, all sin and fall short. But I'd say that's number one if you're a Christian conservative. I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah. What do you think, San? Like,
Me, I think, okay, I take a drink and a long vape. I think
Very different approach.
No, and I ask myself, will I be embarrassed tomorrow morning when I think about that?
Yeah.
When I think about what I said.
When you want to like speak out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, like this is one of the things Dave Rubin talks about in his book. Like, oh, I'm so scared to speak out because I'm going to lose friends. But when you lose friends because of politics, I'm sorry, those people aren't your friends anyway.
Yeah.
Because if you
Preach.
Yeah, like those people, if they can't support you because of an opinion about one thing that does not define you at all, like, you know, I'm a conservative last, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think it's really, I think we just shouldn't worry, we shouldn't worry about it, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how old you are, Patrick, but I think I have an advantage with that because I think like my friends and I grew up in an era where like these things didn't matter.
Yeah, like your
identity,
your friendship
politics,
transcends
Yeah.
politics.
and politics
Yeah.
or anything. And this kind of stuff we didn't care about.
Yeah, and one of the things Dave Rubin talks about, though, like just kind of piggybacking what I was saying, is that you'll meet better friends who do support you.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know, by being your true, authentic, out of the closet self.
Yeah.
You know, your truest self when you're just speaking not your truth, but the truth. You know, so
That's true. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. What about you? Like,
Yeah.
what's some of like? I'm sure people come to you for advice. You're a wise dude. Like,
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah.
I think one of the things for myself is, I mean, both of you kind of just touched on it exactly, is that one of the best things I learned over the last couple of years is to keep your circle really small. The circle of people you care, like whose opinions you care about, keep that really tight, right?
Yeah.
Because not something you and I agree on is that, and actually, San, I want to get, do you have a religious background yourself, San?
Kind of very similar to you guys. I grew up in church.
Okay.
I grew up in a Christian family and walked away from that for a bit, but came back to it. So similar.
Cool.
But
Cool.
go
Awesome.
on.
Awesome. Well, no, I was just going to say, like, it's obviously like when I learned to shrink the circle of whose opinions I care about, that was one of the most liberating things for my courage, for my mental health, all that kind of stuff. Because I basically only care what God thinks, my wife, my parents, my siblings, and like my closest friends, right? And I think that's when you can shed the opinions of anyone outside of that circle, that's so liberating, because it's like, and that's like what, like 15, 20 people tops, right? Because it just allows you to shut out the noise. Obviously, like there's people that I care about, and when they say things that are not true or that are derogatory or whatever, that can hurt sometimes if you dwell on it too much. But it's like, when you come back to reality, I don't think so. One of the things of social media is that we were never meant to handle the opinions of thousands of people and what they think about us, right? That's not how we were designed. And so if you can just learn to shut that out, shut out the hundreds and the thousands of people who have opinions about you that you've never met in your life, and just focus on your family and your closest friends, and your God, and that's it. That has been one of the most liberating things in my life, because I was able to count up that cost before ever starting a podcast or speaking up publicly about this stuff. And it's just water off a duck's back, honestly, right?
Oh, so good.
Which is it's a really liberating concept. And so that, I think, for people who are looking to speak up, just shrink your circle. I think that's so important. Is
That's
not
really
what you
good.
said.
That's really good advice.
Sorry?
Yeah.
That's really good. That's great advice.
Yeah, that's amazing
Thank you.
advice. Yeah, and I think too, like, you know, when you get those random comments from people who are like trolling you, you know, like you don't need to reply to them. You know, like if someone says something hateful to you, you don't need to engage. Like some people just aren't worth fighting with too. I think pick your battles is a really good tip, because I think when I don't know about you guys, but when I first kind of was like a rah conservative at the beginning, because you kind of go on this like high, you know, I kind of was looking for fights. Yeah. And I didn't win them all.
I might still be on that high. But
yeah. You know, it happens some days, you know, you're feeling feisty, whatever, but pick your battles, because some of them just aren't, some people are not worth debating.
I mean,
Okay.
don't throw your pearls before swine, right?
Yeah.
To quote the scripture.
Love it.
Not to call them swine, but that's the analogy, right? Is that like not everyone's worth arguing about.
Yeah.
I always like to give people the chance. Like sometimes I will respond with like a reasoned response, and if they, if they're clearly not interested in a good faith debate, then you kind of drop it. But yeah, it's surprising to me how often it's not in good faith. But
Yeah. People are mean.
No, it's true. Yeah. There's a lot of vitriol out there. A lot of vitriol.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go into. Do you guys want to talk about the whole BLM thing a little bit?
We love BLM.
Oh,
Just kidding.
well, no, I have a couple personal questions for you about
Shoot.
about where you're from, like the whole lockdown stuff. Is that okay if I ask that?
Oh, you want to
Yeah,
go there
totally.
first before
Is
BLM?
that okay?
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, I was gonna get to COVID after, but let's do it now
No,
for
because
sure.
like
Totally.
there's some great people out there, like Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, and
Abbotsford. She's in Abbotsford.
is she?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of her. She's just doing great work out there, and I was just wondering what it's like for you out there in terms of
Lockdown.
the new lockdown measures and stuff. Like,
Yeah, I mean, frustrating. I think is the biggest word, because I think, and recently, just to give you some stats. I was looking at these this morning actually.
Yeah.
We're actually seeing one of the biggest spikes we've seen in BC, right? Where I've been watching the numbers pretty much weekly since this started back in like March, right?
Yeah.
And as far as hospitalizations, for context, BC is a province of 5.1 million people.
Okay.
Right?
Oh.
And we've never had, up until recently, actually, I've never seen that number going higher than 350 hospitalizations from COVID, right? Right now, it's, actually I have this written down. I think it's just under 500. So it's gotten a little bigger recently. Yeah, it's 486 hospitalizations currently, which is the biggest number I've seen, admittedly. And we have 160 in critical care. Formerly, that number had never really gone above like 90, right? But the thing is right now is we have 1.5 million people in this province vaccinated. And what I don't know how to reconcile the fact that you look at, we've been doing this for over a year now. You look at Florida and Texas, both whose cases and deaths are going down drastically, and they're two of the most open states. Texas is 100% open. I believe Florida is as well. And Florida actually has been since like last summer, right?
Yeah. They're thriving.
And then the fact that the median age of death in BC is 86 years old.
Yeah.
Why are we in a place where there's no indoor dining right now? You can't hang out with people outside of your household unless you're outside. Groups of 10 or less outside you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
And stuff. So it's like, it's part of it's reasonable, part of it's not. But it's Bonnie Henry was like lauded on the global stage back last year for treating this so reasonably and for having very little lockdowns. And it's like now we have stricter lockdowns and numbers are getting worse.
Yeah.
Whereas places that are opening up, the numbers are getting better. So what are we doing? And I don't know.
Do you think do you think like Bonnie Henry kind of played the game at the beginning because she didn't have majority government? So she was kind of like, oh, I can win voters over still, but now that she has a majority now, no? Yeah.
That's one of the things I've been trying to parse out is how much of this has to do with John Horgan and the NDP.
Right.
Because and I guess maybe this is just and that's part of my problem all this time right now is like how much is truth and how much is politics, because I'm just becoming more and more cynical about that. But I don't understand, even if you're playing the political game, right? Why, when you're allotted for your reasonable approach and your numbers are fantastic, and then you become progressively unreasonable and the numbers get worse, how is that politically expedient? So I don't know if it's politically motivated or if it's power motivated. I honestly don't know what to think. What do you think, I guess, from Ontario? Because you have kind of a similar situation, maybe probably more extreme with Doug Ford over there.
Yeah,
the so-called conservative. Do we have a name for rhinos, Republicans in name only in the States?
Oh,
Are they like,
I don't know. We call them like liberal lights here, I guess.
Liberal lights? Yeah.
Liberal light.
I was going to say like chinos, conservatives, but that sounds racially tinged. I don't know.
Don't get yourself in any more
Yeah.
trouble than you need to.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Conservatives in name only is what I mean. Anyways.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we think that this is way bigger than just like a provincial thing. Like this is totally like Canada, like on the global stage, we're complacent.
No,
we're notoriously complacent.
We're under globalist rule.
Yeah,
right
like
now.
not to be a conspiracy theorist or anything, but I really do believe that Canada's the test dummy for like like a globalist agenda. I mean, think of the Great Reset. I mean, like even Aaron O'Toole's adopted that like Build Back Better kind of,
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our top health officials work for the WHO. Theresa Tam does work for the WHO. So we're a lot more under globalist rule than people are willing to admit or people even know.
Yeah, and I mean it's just I think to support that, like Doug Ford has a conservative cabinet, a majority conservative cabinet, and you think when you elect a conservative, you would get more options, like to live in a freer society. And we've had one of the worst lockdowns in North America. Like seriously, everything's been closed since November.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was like one hot minute like 2 weeks ago where patios were open, and then we're in lockdown again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not even like outdoor dining is not even a thing out there, eh?
No, literally we can do nothing.
Wow.
It's been like
I
that
was
for
even
over
looking
6
this
months.
morning. I don't think there's a stay-at-home order in a single state in the U.S. outside of I think Puerto Rico, which actually is not even a state. Puerto Rico is the only thing with a stay-at-home order in the entirety of the U.S. And yet Ontario ruled by a so-called conservative premier is
liberal light.
Bad. It's pretty
bad.
bad.
Yeah. That's mind-blowing to me. That's mind-blowing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very confusing. We feel gaslit. Like we're like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It's been infuriating. This city is becoming a shell. Like Toronto was once a beautiful, thriving city, and it's
very depressing. I mean, we go out to these. Like today was a beautiful day where normally you'd see just hordes of people downtown in Kensington Market and Yonge and Dundas Square, and it's a ghost town. It's eerie, it's depressing, it's angering, and I'm sure it's that way out there in BC too. But totally.
And what's funny is that we're fairly. I think BCers, we talk a big game. Like we talk about. I remember even there was a news person I was engaged with him on Twitter briefly. It was saying Bonnie Henry and our our benevolent overlords. He was saying they underestimate our willingness to comply with further COVID-19 lockdowns, which is just like, if nothing else, that's a brilliant illustration of how out of touch the media is these days. But like, no one's been following the orders, right?
Good.
And I'll use the word allegedly. I allegedly have been seeing all like friends and family like the whole time, right? But that's just, everyone's doing that. Like there's not a lot of people sticking to the only go see your household rule, even though we have indoor dining. Outdoor dining. You're only supposed to be going with like people in your household, in your bubble or whatever. Right. And no one is. Everyone's seeing friends and family and stuff like that.
Do they have big protests? Like what are
No, and that's actually one of the things I've been frustrated with, especially being in Abbotsford. I mean, our government is on the island, and they shut down the ferries. So it's like, I don't even, and part of me goes, how is that fair? Like, how is that cool that like our provincial government is on an island that you can no longer access?
Whoa.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. Like, because for me, it's like, I've been wanting to organize like a protest or something like that. And I've never been that kind of person. Like, I've never been to go like get on protest, because usually I make fun of those people for not having jobs. But
I used to do that all the time too.
But it's like when there's actually a serious crampdown on liberty, right? On freedom of, you guys have talked, I've heard your podcast talking about our charter rights to mobility and freedom of association and religious liberty, all that stuff, right? How do you protest that? Like, what am I gonna go do? Like, go protest at City Hall? Like, what's that gonna do? I don't know. In Abbotsford, it's really tough to find a way to speak out against that kind of thing. especially when your government's on an island. But I don't know. What do you guys think? What's a good way to react? How does conservatism do activism? Because I've kind of always been against activism, but maybe that's how we got so bad to begin with.
Well, I think that we need to change young people's minds. Like it's the old people are, some of them are open-minded. I can't, no one's a monolith, but it's these young indoctrinated.
Sorry, say that again for the people in the back.
Can you hear
No
me?
one's a monolith.
No
Say it
one's
again.
a monolith. Yeah. I was like, okay.
Amen.
Yeah, no one's a monolith. Yeah, sorry.
I love it.
That's my go-to line. No,
yeah, 100%. That's one of the most important things I think we can say, because that's one of the reasons we get so much flack. Is how can you like you said it's so racist, like the black community is suffering. It's like,
not all of
so
them.
many people in the black community disagree with the nonsense that's going on.
Yeah.
And it's only because you're an actual racist that you think they all think the same.
Oh,
Like,
totally.
Anyways. So,
we could
sorry,
literally go on like a 50-year tangent about that. I mean, but yeah, no, absolutely. But
totally. Sorry, I totally interrupted you, but I love that. Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. I just thought you couldn't hear me because we've had so many technical difficulties. So I'm so sorry.
No, all good.
But like the young people who have been indoctrinated by these like far left universities, like we need to reach them somehow. And I do actually really believe that a lot of this is spiritual. I do think this is a spiritual battle, but
Totally.
I think more than protests and stuff, I think it's just having conversations with people, because like I think when you lay certain things out for people, they actually agree with you. They just don't know, like they don't know how to define it. Like, I mean, Sandra, you're a perfect example. You have conversations with left-wing people at your work and they agree with everything she says,
Wow.
but they can't reconcile that it's conservatism.
Yeah.
You know? And so I really think just like having open conversations is really one of the things. I think continuing to talk about it on social media, because you don't know where people are at. I mean, Ali Stuckey always says that she has people who listen to her, and then because they continue to listen to her, they eventually change their mind.
Right on. Yeah.
But I think that was intentional. I think they want people to stay home in lockdown and not be talking to actual friends in person, because the impact face-to-face conversations has on people is like by far more impactful.
That's a good point, because if I'm messaging, if I'm DMing someone and we're having a debate, it's a lot less human. But when you're face to face,
it's not even real.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
It's fake.
Yeah.
It is. There's only a tiny portion of truth and genuineness to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Totally.
it's more human to interact in the flesh.
Yeah.
But I think that's intentional. They wanted people to stop interacting with people face to face, because there's so much power in that.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
No, I agree. It's like one of the kind of the early shifts for me, I think, starting the podcast was like, at first I started out with this very noble intention of like reaching across the aisle and having these really great discussions with people who disagreed. And I was very quickly disillusioned of that because of the toxicity of the left these days. Right.
Yeah.
But I think more what our purpose can be is having podcasts like this stuff and speaking up is I think you're exactly right. Like you just summed up exactly what I thought about it. I think the real change happens in one-on-one scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Where you're like having friends over for a barbecue and you get talk. But so many people I think were scared of talking about politics. I don't want to talk about that stuff. But it's like you can do that healthily. You can do that with respect. And it needs to be done more. I don't think politics should be one of those things like, oh, we don't talk about politics in this house. It's kind of like
I
the
think
cliched,
we gotta make politics safe again.
Make politics safe again.
But also
100%.
another thing about the in-person communication and camaraderie. I think that's why there was such an attack on the churches during the pandemic. And why are they putting so much manpower into making sure that there's no more than 10 people in a Christian church? It's for that reason, and it's symbolic. They don't want churches know the power of
Congregating
in
community. Yeah.
right, and that's
totally.
So I think that's I don't know, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Preach
some of the
it,
churches I'm most I love it. Yeah, seriously. One of the things I'm most proud of is some of the churches here is a lot of them shut down and have not come back, right? But there's a couple of churches here that have just gone, because right now I think it's 50 or less outdoors.
Okay.
Right?
Outdoor?
outdoors.
BC's warm.
Yeah,
But it's raining.
It was for a while. We got like a little spring flash of summer, but it turned back to rain really quick here. But but basically, so there's a couple churches, and there's one church in particular that had like basically 6 different tents with 50 people under them, and so they could have like 300 people, right?
Oh,
and
so
and I
good.
was like, that's a church that I like. And honestly, they're one of the wealthier. Nat, you probably know which one they are, but they're one of the wealthier churches in Abbotsford.
I have a guess.
Yeah. And like it's just so proud of them, right? They have the resources to do that, and they're just doing what they can. And I think personally I'd like to see a little more rebellion. I think I'm like, there's a lot I'd love to do to kind of like, it's really tough to reconcile. Maybe you have thoughts on this, reconciling how does a church, what is the scriptural basis for a church living in a world that seems to be stepping on freedoms? Where is that line drawn about how much the church should civilly disobey?
Yeah, to be honest, from the beginning, I've been very much so against churches obeying the government. I know there's that huge like Romans debate, you know, that every Christian throws at you when they're pro lockdown, but to me, like, I mean, this is one of the things Pastor James Coates in Edmonton, Alberta said. Like, I can't limit accessibility into my church, because what if someone is suffering and they try to come and they're not a Christian and they have questions and they need those questions answered in person, and I have to turn them away, you know, because of the capacity like levels or mandates that the government's kind of infringed on them. And I just think all churches, especially after seeing Pastor James Coates, you know, taking the stand he's taken, and I don't know where, I'm guessing we're probably on a similar page about him, but I don't know. Can't put words into your mouth, but
James Coates, 100%.
Yeah. And like, so after just,
God bless him.
Exactly. So after seeing a man like do what he's done to honor and glorify God, like, why aren't other churches falling in line? I just don't understand. Like, because I think it's going to get worse and more difficult for the church. I think like this is like persecution light.
But I think, and I heard this argument about that. And also I want to add to not only Pastor James Coates, but also Pastor Artur Pawlowski.
Oh, yeah.
Who just... But I forget who made the point about
Is he the gentleman, really quick, with like the beautifully gravelly voice who was like chasing the cops out of his church?
Yeah. Get out. That's
I saw a video of his this morning,
Get
actually.
Out.
Yeah.
Get out, you Nazi communist fascist. Yeah. No, but it's incredible that the two of them and Pastor Henry Hildebrandt in Aylmer, Ontario, they've gotten international attention for their defiance of these measures, of the lockdowns.
Yeah.
Like it's against what
they're called to do.
Yes.
They're being obedient to God.
Yeah. So I'm grateful that we have at least 3 who are not just out defying, but just making headlines. So they're incredibly brave. And someone made a point about churches being incentivized to stay locked down and not defying, right? Because there's, you know, they depend on
their charitable status.
Yeah, and it's and just like any other working people, working class, like you collect CERB money and stuff like that. And I don't know the details or whatever, but
well, I know the church that my husband and I used to go to, we don't go there anymore because they jumped on the critical race theory bandwagon.
Yikes.
They literally said that they're afraid to lose their charitable status.
Yes.
That's why they're not opening up. So I don't know. I guess their
rough.
obedience is to the government.
Yeah, that's so hard to hear. I think like I get that civil disobedience line is so hard to like parse out. I get that, but it's like, I don't, because there really is like maybe it's from my ignorance personally as a Christian, but there doesn't seem to be a lot in scripture that talks about civil disobedience, except that like there's obviously the give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's. And then actually, have you guys seen The Chosen? Have you seen that series?
No, but I hear it's really good.
Oh,
it's on
highly
my list.
recommend it.
Yeah.
My wife and I just finished, I think it was episode 6 this morning. And there's the scene of the episode today was, it's the first time where Christ heals the paralytic, and there's a crowd, and it comes and gets shut down by both the Roman the Romans and the Pharisees. So both the Roman and the Jewish authorities, what does Christ do? Sneaks out the back and runs away, right? And so it's civil disobedience, right? He was getting in trouble from authorities and he just pieced it, right? You know what I mean? And so that's an act of defiance, right? It's an act of defiance against the authorities. He was going to get shut down, and that wasn't his time. Obviously his time came when he was to be crucified, but until then he was actively disobeying the orders of authorities, right? And so it's tough to parse out, but it's just, I think that's a great, what James quotes, his point of accessibility is that we're so obsessed with, I think we've become such a material society that we are so obsessed with physical health, even though COVID, in all honesty, is not a threat to most people's material health, because you look at the death rates and the median ages, all that kind of stuff, right? Yep. But we've been so pushed into being in fear of that what happened to spiritual well-being? We should be looking after the eternal fate of the children of God in this world. And we've thrown that to the wayside, for a charitable status as a church?
No, exactly.
That's
why are you a pastor? Why are you a pastor then? I'm sorry. You shouldn't, your church should close as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry. This is the time to take a stand. And I'm maybe a little too harsh about this topic, but I'm very passionate about it. So
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, nothing to forgive.
Yeah.
I think even here's the thing, Nat, even if you're wrong, we need people speaking out about this stuff. I don't know if I'm right. I don't know if you're right.
Only God knows.
But the fact, only God knows exactly. Yeah. But we need people to standing up and speaking out about this kind of stuff, because that's one of the things if anything about COVID has terrified me, it's how willing we are to comply.
Yeah.
And I don't know if all these petty tyrants, whether they're in the government or they're the retail clerk at your local store, going, excuse me, are you wearing a mask? Put your mask on. You know what I mean? Everyone just gets granted this certain degree of power, and people just seized on that and are just going along like little sheep, to use the common term. And it's true. That's the scary part for me, but.
Oh, it's terrifying.
But also, to see the glass half full, I'm very amazed at how the community and some of these protesters and anti-lockdown activists they will literally go to your small business and your whatever small town and swarm your business and inundate it with business, and just
when you defy the lockdown.
When you defy the lockdowns. And so there's strength in numbers, and it's been really encouraging.
Totally. Yeah, there's that great example of the gym. I think I saw it on TikTok.
Yeah, Huff Gym, and also there's a lot of legal avenues and lawyers who will take on all these
pro bono
discrimination cases and tickets and stuff like that. So that's very encouraging.
Yeah.
And I saw Rebel News, actually. I think Rebel News is crowdfunding COVID.
fightthefines.com.
Yeah, which is awesome. That's phenomenal. Yeah. Really? Well, sorry, what time is it? I don't have a clock in front of me. I need to.
It's 7:56 in our time. Okay. So I don't know. That's 4:56 for you, right?
Gotcha. Yeah. Gotcha. Oh, it is. Okay. I'm totally late for the dinner I'm supposed to be going to.
Sorry.
Well, okay, ladies, this has been really good, because this went way longer than I thought it would.
Sorry that you're late for dinner.
Hey, don't apologize at all. Don't apologize. Because I wanted to do this again. We didn't even get to, there's a couple things I wanted to get to. I wanted to get to, obviously, more coronavirus stuff. And then I wanted to get into a little like Candace Owens stuff I wanted to ask you about, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do this again sometime.
100%. Yes. Let's do it again soon.
We'd love to.
Cool. Awesome. Ladies, today has been so good. I always loved it. I talk by myself a lot, just to a camera. And I the one podcast I did with my buddy Lorenzo, and then today have been so awesome. It's so much more fun to have dialogue and discussion and
you do great on your own
in this stuff. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Totally.
So ladies and gentlemen out in the world, this has been a conversation with the InfoWhores, and you should absolutely go check them out. They have great discussions from everything from coronavirus to spirituality, and just everything in between. And they are phenomenal, well thought out voices, and I highly recommend checking them out. So thank you so much for listening, everybody. Nat, San, This has been so fun. Seriously,
Thank you,
appreciate
Patrick.
your time.
It's very
today.
nice to
Yeah.
do this with you. Thank you.
Enjoy
Definitely.
your dinner.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll do. We'll do.
And
Gonna
sorry.
Fly over to. What's that?
And sorry to
Oh, don't say sorry. No, it's me who totally lost track of time. All my devices are being used right now, so I have no access to a clock. Yeah, much love, and we'll do this again soon. And I'm gonna allegedly go to my parents-in-law's house for dinner tonight. But
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah.
Have fun.
All right, yeah, we'll do. Ladies, have
Talk
an
to you
excellent
later.
night. Take care.
you.
See ya.
Take
Thanks so
care.
much.
Bye.
Thanks again. See ya. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this week's Hemlock podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and share it with your friends and family. Tell them to subscribe, because if you loved it, then they're going to love it too, obviously. Also, head on over to iTunes to leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps us a lot with the charts. And if you're not going to leave us 5 stars, then forget about it. Don't worry about it and enjoy the rest of your day. Lastly, head on over to the hemlockpodcast.locals.com to become a supporter and receive access to exclusive content and ad-free versions of the Hemlock podcast. Love you so much for listening. Let's continue to ride out this increasingly insane world with irreverence and joy. This is your host, Patrick Jolliker, and much love, y'all. Peace.